So I launched this app on Product Hunt 8 months back, and now it is making around 1000 to 1500 MRR over the last 2-3 months. Over this video, my goal is to help you understand what I have done overall throughout the journey while I was building this app to reach to a point where the app is now generating revenue. Before you get to knowing the app, it would make sense to get to know a little bit about me. Now, while I have been in software for quite some time now, I've not written code as much as I am writing now. So my initial experience has been around leadership product roles where I would decide what the product should have, but I wouldn't necessarily invest my own time writing the code for making those changes. And initially when I left my last job, my goal was to hire a developer who would help me build a similar company where I was leading the product side while the developer took care of the development side. Soon it kind of turned out and it became clear to me that a lot of developers, firstly, very expensive. Second, it's also going to be hard for you to communicate those requirements to them because they are going to be in the same leadership position as you are, and they will also have their own directions in mind. They will also have their own stack in mind. So while this wasn't a major problem, the major problem was still the fact that I didn't have any money to begin with to pay a developer when I initially started. So the only option that I had at that point of time was to do it myself because I had some time that I was saving from all of the course business that I'm currently also working on. So I started learning about Chrome extensions and I started learning about how they work. Essentially, they are divided into 3 main parts. So there is like the Chrome background, the script that runs on the web pages, and then there is also the, HTML pages like these that basically render your content. So when I learned this, a lot of what I knew initially about the code started becoming more and more familiar. Before writing the code for Ollie, I actually learned how to code by coding a website called Snappy AI, which also has paid users, but is not as successful as Ollie. Now, I wouldn't say Ollie is crazy successful, but it does have a greater amount of users, or more users than Snappy does. 1200 plus users, right? So you can track all of that here. But the idea is that I still didn't know how to write proper code, so I had to invest 2 months just learning how the extension environment looked like. Now, extension is different from a landing page like this. So I have to maintain 2 to 3 different versions of, let's say, extension code, which is completely different. And then there is the main code, which is the code for the landing page like this. This is, in my opinion, relatively easier than writing the extension code because this is what you would mostly find over the internet a lot, as opposed to, let's say, the extension code, which is hard to find. Now, before I move forward, I just want to emphasize the fact that we are launching the version 2 of Ollie on Product Hunt tomorrow or today if you're watching this video right now. And I would love your support for the product. So if I'm going to click on the link here, essentially we have announced a bunch of different features that were asked by a lot of people while, they started adopting Ollie initially. When I first launched Ollie on Product Hunt, we acquired around 100 paid users and it was a great start, but the extension was in the very early stage, meaning it was still a version 0, to be honest. Now that we have around 1000 customers, we've learned a lot of feedback across our Discord group, and we've reached a point where the product now suits the persona that we want to suit. Anyway, so before I go there, if you are on Product Hunt, please support us. And the first phase itself that I'm going to be talking about is the idea. So how did I come across the idea of building Ollie in the first place, right? So if you go to any social media platforms and if you scroll down and you click on comment, right now you would see a Ollie pop-up coming out like this. But typically in some of the posts, you would also be able to see similar buttons for LinkedIn here that basically say congrats, great, looking forward, and so on and so forth. So the idea behind Ollie was that why can't these replies be more natural sounding, right? So the platform itself is supporting or telling you to engage with other users, but the engagement that they are providing is like, two-word engagement, right? Which is not going to essentially help you do more. So what Ollie enables you to do is, let's say if I click on congrats, it's going to generate a reply that is more natural and human sounding in the end of the day, right? So the idea was, why not have an extension that works like this across all social media platforms? And in certain social media platforms, you won't be able to see panels like these, but because these are super hard to implement, to be honest, but you will be able to do something like this, right? So if you select this text and you click on the extension here, it does the exact same thing that it would do by clicking here, right? This gives you independence to do literally anything you would want and make it work across any social media platform. So the idea was that why not build an extension that can be generic across social media platforms and enable you to do what most social media gurus recommend, commenting, but way faster and way more human sounding than it would otherwise. So once I had the idea clear, the next step was how do I build it, right? So I already told you I learned in and out of how Chrome extensions work, and I started building a very simple extension. So before this, I built something called SafeGPT, which basically redacted any personal information when you were chatting with models like ChatGPT, right? So essentially, when first ChatGPT came out, there were a lot of privacy concerns with respect to the data that you were putting on the model, right? So some people were in fact putting even emails when they were using this ecosystem. So the idea behind SafeGPT was that when it's enabled and when you type things like emails, phone numbers in the chat, it would automatically redact that data. It worked pretty well. It had around 700 users. None of them paid, but at least there were people who showed interest. Now the problem with that was it was very hard to monetize, but given the knowledge that I had from building that, I used that knowledge to build Ollie. Again, I had no tech background. While I was using my knowledge to write the code, I was also using Claude and ChatGPT extensively to write boilerplate component code, which would have otherwise taken me months to do. Now, I wouldn't say the entire product is built on top of ChatGPT, but at least some basic components that don't require you to write code. So I have leveraged AI in order to build those things. And if you are a developer in this world and time, it makes sense to use these tools rather than hiding away from them, because end of the day, what makes a good developer is using as much as abstraction as possible, right? Essentially, if someone else has already written the code, why would you want to rewrite that code, right? And that's what models like Claude and ChatGPT enable you to do, is that all of these abstractions are easier to achieve, and it would help you understand or write the basic code with more consistency than you would if you were to write this code yourself. So I used ChatGPT and Claude in order to write some boilerplate code, but the logic and the UX and the flow and everything else comes from my head. But the experience that I have had before this helps me greatly with this, right? So I understand the users, I understand the personas who are using my product, and it helps me build the product that is aligned mostly with their requirements. The third thing I also tried is hiring a developer, and it was a very successful method. Just that, like I said, developers and relying on other people can only slow you down. So initially what we did is, while we are still looking for developers, a lot of the code that was going on landing page and for extension, I focused extensively on, because when we launched later on, there was a lot of feedback, and speed is of the essence. And today we are at a point where we have a bunch of people who've directly just copied our landing page to build similar ideas. And some of the people also pointed this out in our Discord group, but honestly, it does not matter, because the speed of shipping, the fact that I'm listening to users, they don't have that, and they won't be able to catch up by just copying what I'm doing in the backend, right? So this was the development part, a lot of writing code. So I remember spending like hours every day, 4 to 5 hours every day, just writing code. And this was literally every day for the last 8 months. There has not been a time where I've not shipped anything on my, external repositories or not opened Visual Studio Code. In fact, it's open right now as I'm talking to you about this. So a lot of hard work, and the work-life balance is kind of messed. And I'm trying to work on has picked up some traction and reached a point where we don't need to do a lot of modifications. The next was the V1 launch itself. Post the development was done, we launched on Product Hunt, and I'm going to show you my previous launch. Now, because of the fact that I had some experience with product marketing, the launch was not too bad, right? So we did receive number 5 product of the day in our first launch with 471 upvotes, which is insanely good for products that have been built by like a smaller set of or smaller teams per se. So you can see this was the launch page, and we know a bunch of different things that would enable us to reach this rank. So it was number 4 product of the day, but it says number 5 here. So anyways, the idea was that we reached a bunch of different people, which enabled us to get some paid users early on. So I think we had around 100 paid users when we launched it on Product Hunt, and over time for the next 3 months post the launch, there was a lot of iteration, but we were happy about the fact that we made our first $1. I was still not sure if this is something that I wanted to build in the longer run, because I heard a lot of users on Reddit saying this wasn't a great idea, but I kept building it anyways in the background. And over time though, when I had other things going on in my business like course creation and Snappy AI, I did lose interest at some point, but the interest came back later on when we launched it on AppSumo. There was a growth phase where we had a lot of testimonials coming from our customers. Some of the marketplaces that weren't AppSumo also reached out to us, and we listed the app on those platforms, and a lot of users started giving feedback. So we had a lot of paid users coming from there as well, but not as much as we would when we launched launched on the Product Hunt platform itself, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So I was losing interest because the product was not picking up traction, but luckily there were certain keywords that clicked for Ollie on social media, and we started adding a lot of blogs, which kind of brought in a lot of traffic for the product and essentially improved our chances to organically get users. So we started getting organic paid users, not to a point where we would say that this is a great product-led growth, but we reached a point where a lot of people were now buying without us having to go or tell them that this is the product that they will benefit from, or these are the benefits, and so on and so forth. We introduced a bunch of free properties which essentially enabled people to do certain tasks on web pages, like generate Instagram images with comments, right? So all of these things we enabled users to do, and this worked out very well. So some of the paid users came from there as well. And then came the AppSumo launch, where we launched on very low price, to be honest. But in my opinion, the price does not really matter, because we reached or acquired 1,000 users, 1,000 customers during that period. Not only that, we got a lot of reviews. So you can see there are around 29 reviews, and a lot of people are saying good things. Obviously, there are people who have, their doubts and stuff like that, but that does not really matter, because we're getting feedback. Good or bad, it's still feedback end of the day, right? Which is very hard to get for a software product. And if you don't get that feedback, it's going to be very hard for you to improve the product overall. So we were getting a lot of that feedback, and you can see we had a 60-day money back guarantee, where a lot of people also refunded the product. And the good thing is that they gave us feedback on why they are switching or refunding a specific purchase of license and so on and so forth, which helped us improve the quality overall for the extension. If you open our Discord, you would literally see people talking about asking about new features and so on and so forth, which played a great role in, shaping how Ollie is today. And if you follow or are on Discord, you would basically notice me putting an update every other day that we are making an extension. And a lot of this comes from the direct feedback from the users, people who are just in the chat telling us what features should be in the product, and in the help section when they have some issues with the product itself. So the idea is that we are learning from them and building it for them. While the price is low, the people who are giving feedback will help us drive the product in the longer run. So when you are building your own product, ensure that you have a community in place where you're gathering all of this feedback, because if you don't have this, then you're not going to know what's going on with the product. And if you don't know what's going on with the product, it's not going to work in the longer run. The good part about this is that if you're really responsive, the same people who are in your Discord group will be the promoters of your product, and they will start talking about your product in the other groups. And while I don't want people to, do marketing for me necessarily, it's something that inspires me and pushes me to continue building Ollie even further and listening to them even more, because honestly, your and mine feedback will matter very less, because I'm not going to be the person who's going to log into extension every other day in order to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. These are the people who are giving you feedback. The users who bought your product are going to be the ones who will be doing this. So you need to very clearly listen to what they are saying. And for that, you can use Discord, where you can set up a community where people can start giving you all of this feedback. So in essence, if I have to summarize how I reached this point, firstly, it was the idea itself, which did not exist in the market. So it does have some merit novelty wise. And then second was the fact that we had to develop it ourselves. If I had hired an external agency or, a developer to do this, I would have been very slow, but I'm lucky that I picked up the problem and I started working on the problem itself. And third one was the V1 launch on Product Hunt, where we essentially, launched the first version, got a lot of feedback, and then iterated based on that. Then came the growth period, where we put out a lot of vlogs and contents and so on and so forth in order to attract some organic traffic. Then came the AppSumo launch, which essentially skyrocketed the entire growth and pushed us to build the version 2 of Ollie, which I am greatly appreciative of. And then finally, now we are focusing more on the version 2 launch, which will enable us to get even more feedback from the user and improve the product over time. We're also working on, the plans for businesses. We're working on having our own LLMs and so on. So a lot of feedback that people have given us, and I can't tell you how important it is to collect that feedback. I wouldn't be continuing to build this product if I hadn't had that feedback. And I'm happy about the fact that I collected this feedback. It will help me improve the product in the longer run. So overall, this was like a shorter growth story of Ollie. I'm happy to deep dive into any of these things if you would want me to, with respect to how we, collect feedback and so on and so forth. So if you have those questions, put those in the description or comments. If you are a customer of Ollie, trust me, there's a lot of features that are coming your way. And if you bought the premium version, these features are all going to come to you for free, right? So stay tuned and please keep giving us feedback, and I'll see you guys in the next one.